Here we go, boys and girls. Make sure the audio is all good. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hope you're all doing well, having a good day or night or wherever it is that you're at. In today's video, we are going to be talking about ayahuasca and sort of theorizing on how it could have been discovered. Because ayahuasca, if you don't already know, the whole phenomenon of ayahuasca is very, very mysterious, and, you know, not to mention the experience of it, but also the discovery of it and the traditional use of it is very little known about and recorded and talked about in our history. And you know, really where we stand right now, we have no clue how ayahuasca came to be a thing. So I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you know what ayahuasca is. But if you don't, just a quick rundown. And I've made videos in the past really diving into what ayahuasca is. But in short, ayahuasca is a psychedelic tea or brew that is used traditionally by indigenous tribes down in South America, mainly the Amazon basin area. And it's a tea, it's a brew comprised of 2 or more plants. And, you know, different tribes use different plants, but there's 2 main ingredients that go into the ayahuasca that makes it ayahuasca. And those 2 main plants are Psychotria viridis, or chacruna, and Banisteriopsis caapi, or just caapi for short. Now I'm pretty sure the caapi is a vine, and it's also referred to as vine of the dead, and the chacruna is a shrub, so like leaves. And these 2 things are mixed together, and I'll get into this later, but they contain compounds that when combined together, they create a synergistic effect that allows for a very powerful psychedelic experience to take place. And this ayahuasca has been around for at least 1,000 years, as we know of right now, based off of radiocarbon dating and stuff like that, which I'll also get into. But yeah, it's been around for a long time. We don't know how it was discovered, and we don't know how it was discovered, and we also can't get out of these tribes how they discovered it. They are very elusive with their explanation as to how they discovered this. And once again, that's something I'll get into in a little bit. But firstly, really, to break down this whole strangeness and why it's so peculiar and fascinating to me, I want to take you guys through a little bit of a history timeline of some generalized stuff based around ayahuasca. So, Psychotria viridis, which is the leaf ingredient in the plant, Psychotria viridis contains DMT, which is the psychedelic component of ayahuasca. This plant, Psychotria viridis, was first described in 1779. It was first even recognized as a plant in 1779. That's only, you know, pardon my math, but that's only like, what, 300 years ago or so, somewhere around there. So Psychotria viridis was discovered roughly 300 years ago. And just as being a plant. We just discovered that this Psychotria viridis was a plant. Caapi, or Banisteriopsis caapi, in 1852, a little over 100 years after chacruna, in 1852, Banisteriopsis caapi was characterized as a hallucinogenic plant. But they didn't know why it was hallucinogenic or what was even causing the hallucinogenic experience. And to be exact, the Banisteriopsis caapi isn't even what's creating the hallucinations. And this just goes to show you that I think his name was like Robert Spruce or something like that, the person that was traveling through South America that observed this brew that these shamans were using and saw the hallucinogenic experience that they were having, he said that it was the Banisteriopsis caapi that was responsible for this experience. But we'll come to find out that that's not actually the case here soon. So that was in 1852. Okay. So now we're going to get into a little bit of science. Monoamine oxidase, which is an enzyme in our stomachs. I'll get to describing what all this stuff is and what it does here shortly, but monoamine oxidase was discovered in 1928. DMT, NN-DMT, which is the psychedelic drug found, the active ingredient in ayahuasca, DMT was first synthesized in 1931, but it wasn't even noted as being a psychedelic compound. It was just first created and observed as its own molecule in 1931. In 1946, DMT was found to be all through plants, still not being discovered to be psychoactive. And it wasn't until 10 years later, in 1956, that the first psychoactive effects were discovered of DMT. And this was done by a Hungarian chemist named Stefan Zara, who injected himself intramuscularly with DMT. And he was considered the first person to discover the psychoactive psychedelic effects of DMT. And this was 1956. Okay. Now remember that enzyme I was talking about, monoamine oxidase? In the late 1950s, monoamine oxidase inhibitors were first introduced. Or you can also call these MAOIs. And MAOIs, what they do is they, like their name suggests, they inhibit the monoamine oxidase enzyme. And this was discovered in the late 50s, probably sometime close to when the psychedelic effects of DMT were first discovered. So, if you don't know about ayahuasca, this probably all sounds irrelevant and kind of like a blur. But let me break it down to you real quick. So, the two main ingredients of ayahuasca are the vine and the leaf. The vine contains monoamine oxidase inhibitors, and to be more specific, it contains harmala, which is the MAOI. Harmala acts as a very powerful and potent MAOI. So the vine contains MAOIs, and the leaf contains DMT. And left alone, if you were to eat the leaf, or if you had DMT and you ate your DMT, DMT is broken down by the monoamine oxidase enzyme in our stomachs. DMT matches up with the type of molecules that monoamine oxidase is responsible for breaking down. So if you were to just eat DMT alone, the monoamine oxidase is going to rapidly break it down, and you're not going to feel or perceive any sort of psychoactive effects by ingesting the DMT orally. Now, where things get really interesting is when you ingest an MAOI, a monoamine oxidase inhibitor, that enzyme in your stomach is inhibited, and then if you ingest DMT, the DMT is left untouched and is fully metabolized through the gut and is able to be experienced in a psychoactive, in its complete psychoactive sense. So what I'm describing here is that basically, simply put, the ayahuasca brew is a brilliant concoction, a pharmacological concoction that allows DMT to be experienced orally. And the reason I listed the sort of timeline of, the ingredients in ayahuasca and when the DMT was discovered, when the monoamine oxidase was discovered, when MAOIs were first discovered, was because these shamans, these indigenous tribes that use ayahuasca, have been doing so for, like I said, at least 1,000 years. At least 1,000 years. We we, as in different countries of the world, didn't even know about chacruna and cappy until the 17 and 1800s. Not too long ago at all. That was when we discovered the plants that they had been using. Then the ball starts getting rolling a little bit. We start getting into chemistry a little more intensely, and in 1930s, then we discover, oh my gosh, there's a enzyme in our stomachs that breaks things down, breaks certain types of chemicals down. That's called the monoamine oxidase enzyme. Then, you know, let me look at my dates here. We discover DMT in 1930s. Wasn't even known about. And then all of a sudden we find it. And then we find it all through the plants. And then we discover that it's psychedelic. And then MAOIs weren't even discovered until after DMT's psychedelic effects were discovered. And we realized, holy crap, there's these chemicals that inhibit the monoamine oxidase enzyme. This collection of timeline events that I've mentioned is what is necessary for the knowledge of brewing ayahuasca in how we do things. If you wanted to go and make a psychedelic brew out of something that's not orally active on its own, you need to know to locate that plant that contains the enzyme inhibitor that will make this plant active once they're combined. This is an incredible pharmacological feat that we just started really getting our hands into in the 1900s. And yeah, ayahuasca has been being used for at least 1,000 years. And the reason I keep saying at least 1,000 years was because there was one instance where, I think it was in Bolivia, in some cave, a bunch of researchers just found this ancient pouch or little bundle of stuff, and they believed it to belong to an ancient civilization, an ancient indigenous tribe. And through radiocarbon dating, they discovered the ingredients of ayahuasca all through it. The plant ingredients, the MAOIs, the DMT, the whole 9 yards was in this pouch. And through the radiocarbon dating, they discovered that it's been around since at least, I think, what do I got here? 900 to 1170 AD. Pretty fucking old. That's pretty old to be knowing about this ayahuasca brew. Chemistry wasn't even a notion in our minds back then, I suppose, you know, but that they've been that ayahuasca's been around this whole time before we even knew about chemistry is just so fascinating to me. And what's even more fascinating, and this is really the catch here, when I started researching psychedelics and getting involved with psychedelics and stuff, I eventually came across Terence McKenna. I was listening to him talk about being down in an ayahuasca ceremony, and he was talking to a shaman about the ayahuasca, and he was asking, first he asked the shaman, what is all this stuff that I'm seeing while I'm on ayahuasca? And the shaman said to him, those are the ancestor spirits. And Terence says, you mean to tell me those are dead people that I'm seeing in there? Because ancestors, you know, that's kind of what that shaman is implying. Ancestors, those are past dead relatives. Am I getting swarmed by the afterlife while on this psychedelic experience? And then Terence asks the shaman, how they discovered ayahuasca. And without even thinking twice about it, the shaman says, the plant spirits told us. The plants told us. Now, us Westerners don't like to hear stuff like that. So, you know, immediately it arouses questions in me. What do you mean the plants told you how to make ayahuasca? You know, it sounds like you're already on ayahuasca, you know what I mean? And all this stuff, and, you know, the research into the timeline that I just described to you all, really started making me wonder, how the hell did they discover this thing? How did ayahuasca even become to be a thing, you know? We didn't even know about DMT. We didn't even know about the plant. We didn't even know about the monoamine oxidase and the MAO inhibitor and all that stuff until not too long ago. So how the hell have these tribes down in South America that are still living in ancient times that don't even know what a psychedelic drug is, how have they known about this brew for so long? How have they been utilizing this incredible pharmacological reaction? How have they honed in on that? And this is where we're going to shift over to the sort of theorizing as to how these tribes potentially could have discovered ayahuasca. So I've done some personal thinking into the matter, you know, beyond listening to Terrence and what the shamans had to say to him and whatnot, which kind of leads and guides my theorizing on how they discovered it. But yeah, and what I've really thought about is, okay, first things first, ayahuasca had to have been discovered after fire. And more accurately, it had to have been discovered after or during the time that we as humans were beginning to brew teas and mix plants, you know. It was after we had learned about fire, and it was, like I said, during or after we had learned about extracting the nutrients and medicinal values of plants and barks and bugs and shit out of them into a liquid, and then consuming the liquid to get that concoction of nutrients. It was during that time, and I suppose specifically during the time when we were still heavily exploring and researching and discovering new things, where we didn't have a grasp at all of these different plants and what they are and the effects that they have, and that they can even have effects on us, you know. I mean, there was some level of culturalization. There was some level of civilization, you know. They had the fire. They were brewing drinks with different ingredients. There was most likely language that had developed, and that you could potentially tie into Terence McKenna's stoned ape theory, but that's a whole different subject. But yeah, it was during a time where there was civilization, there was fire, and the knowledge of extracting the nutrients out of plants and different ingredients was present. But that stuff listed there isn't enough to discover ayahuasca. I mean, the first real leading theory I have as to how ayahuasca was discovered. Hold on, I need to ingest some nicotine real quick. Just think of this as my mapacho. This is my ayahuasca blunt. the hell was I? Okay. My first leading theory on how ayahuasca was discovered. Picture long ago, a tribe of ancient Amazonian, a little civilization. And they're working together. The men are out hunting. The women are you know, cleaning, keeping stuff together, developing language, raising the kids, cooking, you know, all that stuff. Also foraging. And what they were foraging was plants that they've worked with before, that they have sort of pinpointed what these plants are doing. Like, okay, if I grab this leaf right here and this bark over here and mix it together, I get something that, you know, just brainstorming here, I get something that calms my throat when it's sore, assuming that they were even that level of advanced. But yeah, they were discovering, okay, I can get these plants and use them for this. I can get that mix of plants and use them for this. And they were also working with new plants because, you know, it was complete. It's the Amazon. 1 acre of the Amazon has more life and species in it than the entire continent of North America, you know? So there was plenty of new, what's this? I've never seen this before. Let's try this out, you know? And yeah, the first theory here is that they accidentally collected and foraged Banisteriopsis caapi and Psychotria viridis. They accidentally collected those things, probably along with a mix of other things that weren't even a part of the ayahuasca. They brewed it together, and then they all shared it. They all shared it as a tribe, and, you know, we can consider dose here, but let's just assume that they had a monstrously high dose that they brewed. They brewed some incredibly strong ayahuasca accidentally for the first time ever, and they all drink it, and they all proceed to have a very intense psychedelic moving experience. My first idea here is that they drink it, they accidentally brew it, they drink it, they have the trip, they come out of it, and together, coming out of it, they go, what the hell was that? What the hell just happened? That wasn't like what we usually experience. We've never experienced something like that. A curiosity, a spark of curiosity was born out of this accidental ayahuasca experience. And this civilization, this tribe, backtracked. They said, okay, what was it that we just put into that drink? What if it was the drink that made us experience that? The drink gives us nutrients, the drink makes us feel better, the drinks make us feel bad. Why wouldn't the drink be responsible for sending us into this experience that we all just had? So they backtracked and re-foraged the same plants that they included in that brew. And they brewed it again, and drank it again, and tripped again. And then they realized, okay, we found the mix. Now that they've discovered the mix, they began sort of boiling it down, you know, breaking it down. What is it? One thing in this tea that's making this experience? Is it everything that we've put in here? Is it 2 things? You know, they began going, okay, what exactly is making this happen? And through time, potentially generations, the 2 plants, Psychotria viridis and Banisteriopsis caapi, were recognized to go, okay, collect these and make a brew out of them, and this is ayahuasca. This is our religion. This is our complete spiritual belief system. You know what I mean? That's the first idea of how they discovered it. And that's sort of like scientific, physicist, logical thinking, rational, what just made that happen type people, right? And that's completely viable. That's how many things have been discovered from people in our cultures through the past 500 years was using our logical mind going, I wonder if this is how it works, or I wonder what will happen when I do this. That's my first approach at how ayahuasca was discovered. They, you know, I wonder what just caused that experience, and they discovered it. My second approach as to how ayahuasca was discovered is a little more, some of you may describe it as woo-woo-y, a little more mysterious, a little more spiritual, a little more not so logical. I mean, at least to me, it's logical. It makes perfect sense. But yeah, basically, this is my second scenario. Imagine the same civilization doing the same stuff in the same era, and they accidentally forage the ayahuasca brew, and they all drink it, and amidst the trip, amidst the profound ecstasy of ayahuasca, like that shaman told Terence McKenna, the ayahuasca literally told them, this is how you got here. You know, told one person, or told all of them, or told a few of them, these two plants brought you to us. These two plants brought you to this state. Mixing these two plants together and drinking them creates this experience. That in that situation would be the plants telling them. The plants told us. They ingested the ayahuasca, and the ayahuasca itself said, this is how you got here. They all came out of the experience going, did you guys go to the same place I went to, you know? Or the one person that was delivered the message of this is how this happened went and collected those two plants again and made it again. And basically it was this process of they were revealed to the magic of ayahuasca. And whether it was their own developing human intellectual mind that put two and two together to realize that's how they got ayahuasca, or if it was literally the transcendental knowledge and wisdom of the ayahuasca realm conveying that to them. Both of these theories are completely viable to me. They both completely fit. They work, you know, and I'm sure there's lots more thought and theorizing that could go into it in how they came to discover ayahuasca, considering that we didn't know jack shit really about this kind of stuff until 1600s and on, you know what I mean? It's just, it's a very interesting topic, for sure. Just trying to make sure there's not anything I could have potentially left out. I've never done ayahuasca. I've never partaken in the ayahuasca experience. I've smoked pure NN-DMT, and I've done changa, which, you know, has MAOI in it, but, you know, you're still smoking it, so I don't feel comfortable saying I know what ayahuasca is like. But, you know, after having experience with DMT and just the psychedelic realm in general, you know, and Terence's stoned ape theory, it makes me wonder, good God, like, what did we do with these experiences thousands of years ago? You know, when I'm on a psychedelic looking deeply into the trip and the effects, I am completely mind blown by the fact that, oh my God, this is what people back in the 50s and 60s were looking at, that was blowing their minds and making them awaken, and this is what people down in the Amazon have been seeing and looking at and working with for thousands of years. And it's just crazy to consider. Like, you know, when you see the power and intensity and technology and complexity of psychedelics, and then realize that people have been doing this, and this experience has been around for thousands of years, longer maybe than we have, longer than the serotonin system has even been a thing. It's like, what the fuck are we tapping into? What are we experiencing here? And yeah, if you don't know what the stoned ape theory is, I highly suggest looking into that. That is the idea that basically why we are the way we are right now, why my mind functions the way it does, is because thousands of years ago, back when the Homo sapiens descended out of the trees, because all the foliage was dying out and the trees and forests were dying out, and we started having to look for food on the ground, we started eating psychedelic mushrooms and added psychedelic mushrooms to our diet, and in different dose ranges, and you know, different doses do have different effects on evolution. You know, it's crazy, the stuff that goes into that stoned ape theory, and how, honestly, how can you talk about evolution if you're not going to account for what the ingestion of psychedelic substances would do to a developing culture, a developing civilization? It definitely needs to be taken into consideration. But yeah, that's it for this video, I think. Those are my theories on ayahuasca and how I think it was discovered. I don't know how it was discovered at all. That's why I'm theorizing on it. But it's just a very fascinating thing to look into. And if any of you guys have any differing theories or more to add on to of my theories about this, add it in the comments. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to add on to this, or even go in a completely different direction and see what you guys think and how this potentially became a thing. But yeah, ayahuasca. Thank you so much for watching. I hope, if you don't know anything about ayahuasca, I hope you learned a thing or two about that. And I have videos that I've made in the past about like the specific shamanic use of ayahuasca. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something, got something out of it. And yeah, I'll be back for more. So I'll see you guys.